In rural Indonesia, heavy rain defines the nights in isolated places, like the small village of Karangjati in central Java. It is a quiet grid of rice fields and wooden homes, all watched over by a massive central mosque. The local community treats this building with a specific, guarded reverence, especially concerning the lower level. Local legend tells of a space missing from any official blueprint, a chamber the elders call Ruang Doa Hitam, the Black Prayer Room. This room was built to house an entity that listens to desperate requests. It answers prayers, but only in exchange for a toll paid in blood. The villagers view the site as a dormant, hungry predator. They keep their distance to ensure it remains that way, leaving the grounds entirely empty the moment the clock strikes midnight. In 2019, 3 17-year-old boys decided to challenge that tradition for the sake of internet clout. Rizal, Bayu, and Arman ran a social media channel dedicated to ghost hunting and debunking urban legends through low-budget jump scares. During a live stream, Bayu mocked the village rumors. He told his audience that the underground room was a hoax and promised to film inside the basement that coming Friday night. The clip went viral, but the reaction wasn't what they expected. Older viewers flooded the comments with warnings in broken English, begging them to stay away from old places of prayer and to run if they heard chanting beneath the floorboards. They ignored the warnings. At 11:47 p.m., they crossed the muddy mosque grounds to prove the legend wrong. By the next morning, only one would return, and he would never speak again. Their singular focus on digital engagement left them unprepared for the physical reality of the seal they were about to break. As the boys approached the dark mosque, the loudspeakers meant for the call to prayer suddenly hissed with static. The noise shifted into a wet, underwater-sounding chant that seemed to come from everywhere at once. They found a door hidden under a stairwell, wrapped in heavy chains and stained black. Strange, jagged symbols had been carved deep into the wood of the doorframe. Even as thousands of live viewers spammed the chat with pleas to get out, Bayu took a hammer to the chains. The very moment the heavy seal was finally broken, every single light in the mosque upstairs snapped on simultaneously. The building was no longer a passive structure. The act of breaking the lock had triggered an intelligent, welcoming response from the room below. They walked down rotting stone steps into a chamber that shouldn't have been there. It was far larger than the mosque's actual footprint, stretching out into the dark. Their flashlights caught a centerpiece in the middle of the stone floor, a perfect circle of dried blood, animal bones, burned cloth, and human teeth. A tall, faceless shadow appeared at the edge of the light. Dozens of candles ignited on their own, and a deep voice echoed through the room. "I grant prayers." The camera glitched. When the image stabilized seconds later, Rizal was gone. There was no trace of him left behind, except his flashlight, still rolling on the floor. Bayu and Arman turned to run, but the staircase had vanished. In its place was a solid concrete wall, appearing centuries old. The live stream's final moments captured a figure resembling a woman with a horribly stretched mouth dropping from the ceiling directly onto Arman. Then the feed cut to static. The boys that triggered an ancient transactional mechanism. This chamber was designed to physically trap its occupants until a violent payment was extracted. The next morning, Bayu was found wandering 6 kilometers away. He was covered in mud and completely unable to communicate. When doctors examined him, they found his tongue had been removed with surgical precision. The extraction left the surrounding tissue completely undisturbed. There were no incisions, no blood loss, and no scarring, a state physically impossible given the injury's trauma. The police response was swift. They denied the room existed and oversaw the immediate demolition of the mosque, rushing the process to ensure the site was leveled as quickly as possible. The authorities chose the absolute silence of a demolition over the risk of leaving the room intact, burying whatever evidence remained beneath the rubble. Weeks later, a 13-second clip of corrupted footage was leaked online. It was the final moment of the livestream before the camera was lost. It showed Bayu alone in the dark, bleeding from his ears. Behind him, hundreds of shadow figures stood perfectly still, watching him. As the camera zooms toward the blood circle, a massive, shapeless mass on the floor heaves up and down, as if breathing. This evidence points to a practice known as pesugian, an ancient form of black magic where individuals trade human souls or body parts for power. In rural Indonesia, the scariest places are those that are still being fed. Somewhere beneath the dirt, that entity waits for the next person desperate enough